Hi, I'm Vicki, Authentic Leadership Coach. I'm here to help you live an authentic and joyful life. And we're going to talk today about feeling overwhelmed when there's a lot of circumstances happening around you that are outside of your control. Whether that is in your job, you haven't maybe received a promotion that you wanted, or feel like you're at a dead end in your job or work, or it's in your personal life, or maybe even the politics of the day feel overwhelming and out of control for you. Before we dive into that, if you don't know me yet, thank you for being here and exploring along. I left the corporate world 5.5 years ago to move into full-time coaching. What I absolutely love about coaching is the ability to help people transform their lives from difficult communication, being out of balance, feeling, frustrated about what's happening, to having more clarity and confidence about the direction that they're going. And I have worked, well, let's see, right now I've probably done definitely over 3,000 sessions with people all across the board, from top level leaders of organizations to just individuals wanting to cultivate happier lives. Specialized a lot in helping people move forward through obstacles that feel really tough and difficult, like maybe career transitions, life transitions. And so today I want to talk to you about this idea of overwhelm, what's in our control, and how to stay in a space where we are engaging with the world around us in a positive way versus a draining way. I've been thinking about this topic because it seems like themes happen, right? And a couple weeks ago, there was a theme amongst the people that I was working with. Like, they were all bumping up against an obstacle that felt overwhelming to them. I think one person was really frustrated that they didn't get a promotion that they felt they deserved. And a few more people are very frustrated with the political events that are happening in the world around us, and others feeling frustrated because they know there's some difficult conversations they need to have, and they haven't had the ability to have them yet. I myself have felt some frustration, some overwhelm with the things that are happening in the world. And it's an opportunity for me to come back and revisit these things for myself. So today we're really going to focus on what's within your control and what's not within your control, and how do you know when you're spending your energy in each area. And I've got my notes here that I might refer to occasionally. So, a good sign that you're spending time in areas that you can't control is that you're feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, defeated, depressed, and really out of control. There can be this feeling that anything that you do doesn't really make a significant impact on the situation. And a lot of times there's blaming others, there's complaining about what others are doing, and there doesn't appear to be any direct action that you can take to make a difference. Many times, to go along with this, there's indirect communication or a lack of clear communication with people who could actually help solve or help you contribute to a solution. There's often catastrophizing goes along with this. So catastrophizing is a thinking trap where our mind just shows us the absolute worst case scenarios that are going to happen with everything. There's often comparison, that syndrome that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Maybe the grass is greener if you worked for another company, or if you had a different spouse, or if you lived in a different country. Which, by the way, I'm coming to you today from Merida, Mexico. Part of my journey has been living in a different country for much of the last 4 years. That country primarily being Mexico. I've lived in quite a number of different places in Mexico, and currently in Merida, Mexico. Which in Mexico there is always noise, there's always something going on. And even as I decided whether I was going to record this video right now or not, there's noise happening around. So if you hear some background noise, just know that is part of the thriving life of Mexico. So those are some indicators that you are in thinking patterns that are focused on things that you cannot control. Often we feel like a victim of those situations. We feel powerless, and we feel like things are happening to us that are beyond our control. When we're in that space, we feel overwhelmed. We feel like there's no action we can take that is helpful, and it really disturbs our peace. So the opposite of that is keeping yourself focused in areas that you can control. So when we stay in thinking patterns that are focused on what we can control, we have an empowered mindset. We feel like there are things that we can control and influence in our life, and we have agency in those things. And we can see that things maybe are happening for us, or maybe if they're not for us, you can at least say that, well, they're happening in general. They're not necessarily happening to me as a personified event. It helps in these situations to stay out, well, as we defined earlier, blaming, complaining, spiraling. Those are characteristics that go with focusing on things out of your control. So the opposite of that is focusing on what is within your control in the moment. And sometimes the first thought is, well, there's nothing about the situation that's in my control. But that is never true, or in my experience, very rarely is that true. We'll talk more about that. We can have direct and active communication. Anytime we choose direct and active or proactive communication, that moves us into a state of being empowered and taking ownership and agency in our own life. And a really important part of being empowered is focusing on the present moment and not making up stories in the present moment. When we're feeling disempowered, there's usually also elements of making up stories about what the situation means. And that's all about future telling. And we're not fortune tellers, so we can't be future tellers. So if you're getting into future telling, then that's a sign that you've moved into focusing on spaces you can't control. Being in the present moment, being realistic about what's happening in the present moment, but not needing to make assumptions or stories about that helps us to stay empowered. Much of both of these spaces is about mindset. It's about choosing our thinking patterns and thinking about, are we being kind to ourselves? Are we being loving, innovative, creative? And are we taking are we exploring to see what action we can take? We're being quiet about and thoughtful about situations versus just rambling and talking nonstop to other people, catastrophizing. And again, coming back to choosing the actions that are within our control. And being really authentic about acknowledging the emotions that we're having in the moment. Those are things that help us to stay empowered. Now, learning a good, solid communication skill set is one of the biggest things that I work with a lot of people around. I call it conflict-free communication, where we learn how to communicate all the things that are important to us, but in a way that's respectful to the people around us. I think that's super important in our political environment right now. No matter what your perspective of that is, there's a lot of people in communicating from that disempowered space where they're blaming and complaining and pointing that the people on the opposite side are wrong, and there's not any effort at a more helpful way of communicating. I want to end this conversation today by focusing on the 8 C's as defined by internal family systems. Internal family systems is a therapy that was developed by Richard Schwartz, and it helps us to be more clear on our own agency and on focusing on our own agency, which helps us to remain in our wisest, most centered space. So we could call these the 8 C's of self-leadership. And I want to be very clear when it comes to leadership that if you have not taken a role in leading yourself, there's no way that you can lead others with integrity. So absolutely, above and beyond, leading yourself is a very, very vital stage of leadership. So the 8 C's of self-leadership. Number 1 is calm. It's feeling centered, peaceful, and grounded. If you're not feeling calm, then then your nervous system is what we call dysregulated. And when you're dysregulated, your thinking actually drops into your limbic brain or even into the lower parts of your brain. And you don't have access to the highest, most wisest parts of your brain when you're thinking. Clarity is number 2. That's seeing situations clearly without distortion or confusion. Now, that's really important, and especially in a day and an age where we can't always trust the information that's put out, um, whether that's information carried to us by others or published somewhere on the internet. Um, we have to take responsibility for finding clarity and seeing clearly. So, in the case of the individual I was working with who was feeling frustrated about not getting a promotion, one of the things that helped her to see more clearly is thinking about things from her boss's perspective and actually finding out, what are the qualities that I need to embody to receive that promotion that I thought I needed. It's being very clear instead of confused. We would call confusion the opposite of that. There's a lot happening in our world right now that wants to keep us in confusion, and because when we're in confusion, then things are distorted. And that is a tactic that is used by people who don't have your best interest at heart. So if you're feeling confused about a situation, know that there's probably could be some manipulation, some intentional distortion going on. And it's your due diligence to do the research, to do what's needed to find clarity. Number 3 is compassion. Compassion goes two ways. Compassion is empathy that we extend to others, and it's also self-compassion that we extend inward. And for our conversation, I think both are important. Compassion is described as having warmth and understanding for yourself and others. And I think this is really important. When we're feeling in a space of overwhelm, one of the ways that we can ground ourselves to come back out of that space is by having compassion for ourselves. That it feels, many situations feel really difficult. They feel very challenging. They feel very scary. And being authentic about that is important. Is important. And then I think there's also the piece about compassion for others. How are situations in the world impacting other people? And I think compassion for others also means that we need to have a deep respect of life. If we are not respectful of all life, then we're going to be dismissive of the experience of other people. And that is something that causes us to be and see with distortion in the world. So a fundamental respect for other human beings. We could take this even further than that, a fundamental respect for all things that have life, plants, animals. That is part of compassion. The fourth C is confidence, trusting in yourself and your abilities. Now, when I talk to people in my coaching conversations about confidence, I say confidence is influenced by 4 things. It's influenced by your values, your skill set, your mindset, and how balanced you're showing up in the world. And if you are feeling a lack of confidence, you can actually cultivate more confidence by looking at your values, by looking at your skill set. Often, a skill set of clear communication means, we need to learn how to have a skill set for navigating conversations. And mindset. Mindset is all about how much of our thinking is used for self-sabotage and holding us back and doubt and second guessing, and how much is used for innovative, creative, forward-thinking action. And then balance is all about, maintaining that balance of our way of living. Courage is number 5. Courage is defined as facing challenges and fears with strength. I think our world today requires a lot of courage, and it takes courage to look at the things happening in the world, no matter what your perspective of them is. It takes courage to look at those honestly, and it takes courage not to be influenced by the loudest voice in the room. It takes courage to think independently. It takes courage to disagree. It takes courage to say, I don't think that's the best path. And it takes courage to stay true to our own inner values. Number 6 is creativity. Thinking openly and generating new possibilities. This is where we have agency, right? In thinking about what is the action that we can do in this moment. And creativity invites us to stay in what we can control versus what we can't control. As I'm feeling a little overwhelmed myself with some of the things in the news media, and I'm working to sort out clearly what's truth and what's distortion, one of the things that I decided for myself is there's a lot about what's happening in the world today that I can't control. But I firmly believe that the events of the world today in part are happening because people have not fully healed trauma that is active within themselves. And one of the things I can do, one of the things I'm really great at doing, is helping people identify and heal trauma so that they can be in greater self-leadership and then greater leadership of others. So it doesn't do any good for me to get caught up in things that are out of my control, but I really can move into what's within my control. It's actually why I decided to record this video today, because it was within my control and my creativity to record this message for you today. Curiosity. Number 7 is curiosity, being open-minded and interested in learning. So curiosity means we have a flexible growth mindset mentality versus a closed mindset. A closed mindset points at other people and says, you're wrong, you're stupid, how can you be so dumb, you're mean, you're bad. And an open mindset says, I wonder why it is that my friend or my coworker sees things the way that they see things. And when we can move into conversations that are curious and open, and we can learn about the perspectives of other people, that doesn't mean you agree with those perspectives, but when you give other people the respect of being curious about why they see things the way they do, then you can enter into much more genuine and authentic conversation. So always put curiosity above defending your own perspective. And then number 8 is connectedness, a feeling of being deeply connected to yourself and others. I think this is really important in this world right now. That feeling of being connected to self, I think that's the most, above and beyond, the most important piece to start with. And if you've been through some crap in your life, if you feel like life has been a little bit chaotic, I imagine you also feel a little bit disconnected from who you truly are. And you might feel like you're operating more out of the conditioning, the defenses, the trauma, the stressful experiences you've had. You might feel like you're operating more out of defense of yourself than you are out of connection to yourself. And if that's the case, I would invite you that the way to move into greater connection with yourself is to look at those things inside of yourself with compassion and to find the right help in healing those things inside of you. Then you can move into a connection with yourself and clear connection with others. Having one safe person in the world to be connected with is one of the greatest strategies for emotional regulation and the feeling of safety. Did you know that a child who goes through very traumatic experiences, if they have one safe person that they can confide in and feel safe around, it mitigates, it eliminates that trauma from their brain. But when a child doesn't have a safe person to go to, that's when the events of their life imprint very deeply on them. And maybe even as adult, you feel like, as you're listening to me talk, like, I don't have a safe person in my life to go to and to be around. And that's a difficult feeling, right? And so in that case, I really encourage you to, one, again, seek what you need to do to create that connection with yourself, but also be getting support around creating safe connections with others. So that's what I have to share with you today on the 8 C's of self-leadership and on this bigger topic of staying in what we can control versus focusing on what we can't control. I'd love to hear what's been helpful to you about this conversation, and if there's any points in there that you'd like me to expand upon, please leave a comment, and I'd love to stay in connection and communication with you. Now, I invite you to take a look. Where can you move more into those 8 C's of self-leadership today, and what can you let go of that will help you move in that direction, right? I'm Vicki Haddock, Authentic Leadership Coach, and I'm glad that you spent this time with me today. Take care.